Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is co-host Daniel McAdams. Daniel, good to see you.
Good morning, Dr. Paul.
Very good. Yesterday was an interesting day, politically speaking, economically speaking. The markets were all mixed up and people were trying to sort all this out. So I guess it's jumping. It did remind me a little bit, listening to the news back about 1973 and 74 on some of the early things that were going on. And everybody's, of course, alluding to, could this be another Watergate thing? It's obviously very serious and significant. I watched the markets and we saw, because of the chaos and the political squabbles going on in Washington, the market got nervous and dropped down almost 400 points. So you can't, ignore that. But it seemed to be settled more than aggravated when finally they decided they had to appoint a special investigator. And we have a chief prosecutor now who knows the FBI, used to be the director of the FBI, Robert Mueller. And he's been appointed, and they say he's a good guy. Everybody loves him. He served out his 10-year term as director and was asked to do jobs since then, and well respected, and he doesn't strongly align himself with one party over the other. Of course, that doesn't always reassure me. Yeah. Sometimes you want to know exactly where they stand, because the big issues, I think, are bipartisan. But I don't know enough about him to actually make a personal critique of what to expect. The process, though, I'm very leery of. I just think this is way over the top, and a lot of this stuff that's been going on has been sort of, orchestrated for political reasons, and the Trump issue comes up, and it doesn't seem to me like the motivating factor is to find out the truth and bring about justice. I mean, all I have to do is look at Schumer on TV, and all of a sudden I don't get reassured that is what is the goal. So I know you've looked at this, and you've been pondering this about just what's going on and how significant this is. And even though I think it's in a way unnecessary, it's still very significant and very important, and who knows where it's going to go.
Yeah, and some of it does feel like a coup, because you put things in order before you move next. And one of the critical things was Attorney General Sessions recusing himself over something that should not be a big deal. As a senator, he met with the foreign ambassador. Well, they all do it all the time, but somehow he was cowed into recusing himself. And so the job, that this extraordinary power, devolved to the deputy Attorney General, who issued the ruling yesterday that we need a special counsel. And words are important, so I thought we would pull up the actual word of the letter. Okay. And just briefly touch on the three important issues. This special counsel will investigate and prosecute any links or coordination between the Russian government and individuals associated with the campaign of President Donald Trump, any matters that arose or may arise directly from the investigation, and any other matters within the scope of 28 CFR, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The third point is simply more of a process. I think the most important point, it may well be the second point, because the second point is what gives an enormous leeway to Mueller. Any matters that arose or may arise directly from the investigation. That seems like a limitless. Yeah,
I wonder if there became a necessity to maybe really check up on the process in the FBI, whether they'll do much of that. But I don't think that's their target right now. I think this is a political gamesmanship that they're playing. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But it can't be a positive for our country. But people say, well, because of this chaos, it's look at what it did to the markets. And I don't look at it quite that way. The markets reacted, but I think that the markets are unstable, and maybe it just needs an event to make the markets react. Because if the dollar was down sharply, and it's been down, but it responded by going down. But gold didn't respond by going down, so you can't say money gets worth less. Maybe it's the fragile systems that get hit under these circumstances, and things that are more stable, like gold, people resort to. But there was a lot of activity yesterday, and a lot of people, very worried about it. But the big question is what might come of this? I do know that it lingered, obviously with the Watergate thing, and yet I just am not, thinking. Even though the word yesterday came up, and that's what frightened the market. They talked about, impeachment, and somebody, he actually came up and said, yeah, he ought to be, Trump has to be impeached. I think the odds of Trump being impeached under these circumstances and what's going on, for what we know, I think the whole issue of impeachment, I think most people are seeing through this. I think most of the people, Trump supporters and others, if they'd admit it, they're probably more worried about, are they going to have a good job next year? Are they ever going to pay their student debt? Are they ever going to have a better system? Other people might say, when am I able going to get my free stuff forever? And that's what they're thinking about rather than this process. And I know, politically speaking, any damage they can do to Trump, they will do it. So if they can throw out the word impeachment, they're going to pursue that. But I don't think that's happened. Sometimes I worry about alternatives to impeachment for the people who really can't stand Trump. That to me is more serious. It might be a more serious threat. Now that, if anything like that happened, an untimely death or injury or destruction, even using the 25th Amendment, that bothers me to think that that's on the books. And when people are different, it's real easy to go to the psychiatrist, to get a diagnosis. Think of how the authoritarian governments have done. They put you in mental institutions. Yeah. And I just think that 25th Amendment is very, very dangerous and really quite unnecessary.
So the impeachment thing, you're saying you don't think it would be impeachment and removal, or even just impeachment in the House, or how far do you think they could go?
Well, they certainly wouldn't get by the Senate because it has to be 2/3. But if it's going to happen, it's going to happen like Clinton, and you just need a majority vote in the House. And but I think that would still be a bit difficult. I don't think that's going to happen. Something's going to have to change dramatically before they go through that process. And of course, with this chief prosecutor out there, who knows? It's probably messier than even we have suspected. We suspect, all kinds of things going on, but I imagine there's a lot of shenanigans go on. But I would think that, that it's not, well, this is all Trump. This is designed to get Trump and destroy his administration. But you wonder why. I imagine with those broad powers, I wonder if this investigator, whether Mueller would actually go and pick up the leads he gets with Clinton. We think we've heard the last word. They just decided, well, yeah, she did all that stuff, but we're not going to prosecute her. Yeah. And so it was a bipartisan agreement that just drop Hillary. But what if this prosecutor is truly tenacious and wants to get to the bottom of that? I would think that there's going to be a lot of linkages there, because if they have somebody, it looks like almost anybody who's ever talked to a Russian is vulnerable. And just think of how much information they have. How many records do they have? Yeah. So they're going to overlap. And then if you start measuring, well, there was money transferred, somebody made money in Russia and he made money. Well, there's some people who had foundations that got money from the Russians. Yeah, no kidding. So that is a can of worms. I would think that there are some people like on the Flynn affair. Flynn, they're trying to put him in a court. But what about the people who released the information? Yeah. If they go after that, maybe people are sick and tired of the leakers, and if they pursue that, all kinds of surprises may occur.
Yeah, I wonder. I can't help but thinking that a lot of Republicans, at least in the House, be much happier under President Pence. They know him. They've worked with him. They know about him. What do you make yesterday of the House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy saying, I guess in a closed meeting, Trump's probably paid by Putin? I mean, I wonder how much that sentiment is in there. It's almost a hysteria.
Yeah, I think it is, and it is true that Pence is pretty well approved there, mainly because of his anti-libertarian views, when it comes to civil liberties and foreign policy. Of course, our administrations are not doing such a hot job on civil liberties. And foreign policy, we're still trying to figure out. But I think that I think like Pence, even if they talk about, it sounds good to say President Pence now, but he would pose plenty of dangers to the country because the policy, we don't know Trump's policy, but we do know Pence's policies, and we know that he does not find the neoconservatives as his enemy, but rather his allies.
Yeah. And the thing about Mueller and Comey, there was a 2013 profile in the Washingtonian magazine, and they talked about how close friends they were. And they mentioned, here's a quote, "Close partners and close allies." They were by Ashcroft's bedside, if you remember, when the spying thing came up. So apparently they are very close. I wonder the acrimony that Comey might feel toward Trump, how Mueller might represent that in his how that might affect his investigation.
Yeah, and that'll be up for grabs. And along that line, what I wonder about is if I'm correct in assuming that we're not going to have an impeachment and we're not going to go that way, will this whole affair change the tone of the president? Of course, people have argued that his aggressive tone is part of his problem. When there's a little bit of an aggressive tone defending liberty, I don't mind it so much. But you wonder, well, maybe he will have to back off. Maybe he'll look at this and this is pretty serious and change his tone. So foreign policy. I don't know if he'd change anything significantly other than if he understands a little bit about the deep state, that he might be more willing, and he has been a little bit more willing to go along with the status quo. For a particular proposal, his military people, he still has his military advisors, still looks to them, and they want more troops in the Middle East. Now, he might decide, well, maybe a little skirmish over there, and the people, we really need troops. That'll unify the people, unify the country, and unify the Republicans and Democrats together. And our security is being threatened. And when you think about the trouble that Clinton got into, he bombed several places, for a distraction. So some events like this are distractions when these kind of things come up. So I think that there could be changes in his attitude and tone, and it changes maybe superficially of the foreign policy, but it will be more status quo and less likely to be challenging like we might like him to be.
Maybe another false flag in Syria.
But
what I thought about too is exactly how will this affect U.S.-Russia relations, this special prosecutor? And I think the timing of it is so important if you look at it. Now, Trump had just concluded a successful meeting by all accounts with Foreign Minister Lavrov from Russia. They sat down, apparently they talked about the de-escalation zones, which were going fairly well. The issue of separating al-Qaeda from the so-called moderates was going along. And then all of a sudden you had, and we talked about it earlier this week, you had Stuart Jones, an acting Assistant Secretary of State, put up an extraordinary press conference about these crematoria, which had been known and talked about forever. Just as the questions were getting, well, why are you talking about this now and how much do you know about it? He shut down the press conference immediately before any probing questions could be asked. And I don't know if you know about this, he retired the next day after the press conference. He said he was leaving to pursue a new career, this Stuart Jones was. So that's very suspicious. Then you have the whole, frenzy about what Trump leaked to the Russians information about laptop bombs on planes, and this is a frenzy. And then you have the whole issue of whether Trump pressured Comey to back off of the Flynn investigation. And of course, the Washington Post and New York Times are playing that up to the maximum extent possible.
You know, when a president does this, makes a trip, and it's significant in the conventional wisdom of today because we have to check up on our empire. And if it's a president that is likable and the media is sort of with him, maybe like with the previous administration, this is all puff, puff, puff. He's diplomatic and he's checking on things and he's an important person. Now, maybe this event is identical to what maybe Obama would have done, but will he get the same kind of coverage? See, I don't think so. I think that if he's overseas and there's bits and pieces of juicy material, instead of them talking about, you know, are they going to put more? Will NATO be putting more military facilities on Russia borders and some very important things? No, they're not going to be talking about that. They're going to be talking about what's happening back here at home. But that's controlled once more by the deep state and, you know, by the media, and they will control that, and that I think we'll continue to see that happening.
Yeah, and they do work together. You know, if I can go into some concluding thoughts, if you don't mind, I read Bob Wenzel, our friend, who I think had a very good essay last night. I don't know if you caught it, but he makes a good point. And okay, Bob Wenzel, no Trump fan. I think we can agree
right.
on that. But he makes a good point, just as an observer, that Trump doesn't understand the difference between power and control. As a businessman, he's used to controlling his employees. As Wenzel said, you tell them to pour concrete there, and they pour the concrete and put up a building. Well, Washington is different. It's about power, and you don't necessarily have the ability and the power to get rid of people who are not doing what you want. But Wenzel had some interesting advice. You've got to put people in that are loyal to you. They're really loyal to you. And he, even though he's found distasteful, someone like Giuliani or someone like Christie, you know, he said not from a libertarian perspective, but people, rather than someone like Reince Priebus and the others who are loyal to the system, probably a big mistake. And, you know, and I wonder, I mean, how is he going to save his presidency at this point? My thoughts that I would add to what Wenzel wrote is that he really rode into power on the back of his ability to really tap into the sentiment of the people. For better or for worse, whether he was lying or telling the truth, his populism, his rallies, his ability to connect directly with the average person, whether we like him or not, is extraordinary, I think. Mm-hmm. And I think if he's going to do something, he needs to probably tap back into that. He probably needs to have some people set up some PACs to help people pressure their congressmen to back off on some of this stuff.
No, I think he's hit on something because power is the issue. Philosophy has been handled. You know, it's so ingrained. You know, the Fed is going to remain. Keynesianism is going to remain. Deficits are going to be remaining. Our foreign welfare, our foreign system, and our empire, that's all going to stay the same. But it's power and intrigue and personal and personalities go on. And money, you know, money. Yes, they are distributing a lot of trillions of dollars. Who gets bailed out and who doesn't? So it is, but I think it's the power, and as you're saying, the power is corrupting, and that's what certainly happens. I would like to go ahead and close with talking a little bit about the possibilities, because it came up yesterday, especially when the markets went down sharply, is what will this mess do to the Republican legislative agenda? And when they refer to that, they're referring to solving the problems in Medicare and Medicaid and Obamacare, as well as the tax cuts. And now they're saying, you know, a lot of people would like to say, oh boy, and the markets were sort of saying this too, oh, maybe this will ruin the tax cuts, and maybe this means we'll never get around to dealing with Obamacare. And that may be the case, but I think those problems are structural, and they're not short-term political problems. I think even before any of this scandal really got built up, none of that was moving smoothly. You know, they're talking about tax cuts. At the same time, they say, you know, well, we'll probably get the tax cuts because we're going to agree and get a couple Democrats to vote with it because we're going to vote $1 trillion worth of infrastructure money and that sort of thing. The country's broke, and that's why the system doesn't work. this political stuff is an aggravation, but even under perfect circumstances, you don't have to have a political crisis like yesterday to have the stock market go down. The last several, in the 90s and 80s and in this century, we've had sharp corrections. We're going to have one. It might be a precipitating event to have something done politically, but that's going to come because it's in the system. That's what they can't deal with, because they will not deal in a universal bipartisan fashion saying, you know what, we're off track. We have a system that's not viable. We have a system designed to spend money forever. We have a system that does not protect personal liberty. We have a system that protects empire around the world. And all this other stuff is just superficial compared to the big problems. And yet, long term, it will break out. The economic system will break out. The foreign policy will eventually be the issue, because it's not viable. It can't work. And we're going to see a lot more of this. And one of these days, we'll have a lot bigger correction than we had yesterday of 300 points. Probably not today, probably not tomorrow, but in time, you will see it. It will be bigger than ever before, and we will be forced to spend time studying about the true structure of the monetary system and the nature of our government, and why we should have a government to protect our liberties and not to run our lives. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.